Zanera.
Hey everyone, this is Zanera Namal. I am a Global Innovation Fellow at CCIT and I welcome you all to MEDJACK Webinar Series version 3.0. Allow me to give a brief overview of our series to those who might be new to our community. We launched a book back in 2021, that's MEDJACK first ebook of AQU. It contains all the experiences of CCIT encompassing both the highs and the lows, and it's been co-authored by 15 co-authors. And each time we discuss a chapter of our book as a conversation starter. We invite our panelists and we provide them with a chance to share their journey about innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, we like to call as ICE. With that, I would like to introduce my esteemed moderator for today's session, that is Dr. Mehreen Sulaiman, a luminary in sleep medicine and co-director at CCIT. Dr. Sulaiman brings an invaluable blend of expertise and seasoned experience. Her multifaceted career lends a rare and enriching perspective to our discourse. Moving forward, please join me in welcoming our honored speaker, Mr. Ali Amin, the co-founder and CEO of UBI Global. Under his dynamic leadership, UBI Global has blossomed into a global nexus of over 1,000+ incubators and accelerators, bridging corporations, governments, and more than 100,000 of startups across 90+ countries. His meticulous approach to cultivating relationships and facilitating impactful collaborations has illuminated UBI Global as a beacon in the business incubation and acceleration ecosystem. With a philosophy rooted in diversity, community, and continuous learning, Mr. Amin has steered UBI Global to the forefront of business incubation and acceleration, fostering an ecosystem where innovation flourishes seamlessly. And now I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ali Amin, for joining, and I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Mehreen.
Thank you, Zanera.
Thank you. Wow, I have to say, what an introduction. Can I copy that and send that to my parents? I think they would be super happy to hear all of that.
Send them the record.
And it's so strange to hear Mr. Amin, because for me, that's my father. I'm just Ali, so that's also, but thank you for those kind words. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So thank you for that, Zanera. So this is the third iteration of these webinar series that we started after the launch of our book. And the chapter we'll be using for today's conversation is chapter 4 of the book, which is called Incubation, Hatching Eggs in the Innovation Ecosystem. So chapter 4 was penned when we wanted to discuss about our journey, CCIT's journey at Aga Khan University of setting up the incubation program and incubation cohorts and introducing the concept of incubation to a healthcare organization. We do have other institutions under AKU, but then our niche is primarily healthcare. So all the challenges that we faced or what programs we introduced, what worked for us, what didn't work for us, about the journey of, like as we like to call it, about the journey of mavericks, aka crazy people, passionate about setting up a healthcare innovation hub in Pakistan. So that's the chapter we've chosen for you, Ali, today. And with that, I'd like to move forward with my first question. So, keeping UBI in mind, how does UBI Global's philosophy harmonize with the general principles and processes of incubation that are outlined in chapter 4, provided you've read the chapter?
The word harmonize, I thought it was quite interesting, that word itself, how you kind of define it, processes. But the way I interpret it is that, okay, so how do we define and what's the purpose of an incubator, and how is this supporting the goal of what we are trying to achieve? And that type of question was one of the things that when I started the company, or when I started reading about it, found it difficult, because when it comes to defining a set of process and a set of entity way of working, everybody out there had their own definition. So the industry itself had a problem of knowing exactly what an incubator or accelerator is or was, and how that supported. But there were some core principles around it that we found interesting that we try to implement. So from a UBI Global point of view, definition of this process was a key aspect for us to set. And that definition is that a business incubator, regardless of industry, if it's medicine or across all type of technologies and focus areas, it's a program. And a program, per definition, has a start and an ending. You cannot be incubated forever, and you cannot. And there needs to be some sort of clear exit around that. So I think that was one of the key components that we found immediately, is that when we work with innovation entrepreneurship, there is a process in place with a clear start and a clear ending. And that was something important for us to set straight from the start. Then the next aspect of that is what happens in between. And there is more wiggle room about the definitions and the activities around that. So again, we took a closer look at this regardless of an industry, but so that it could be a broad definition throughout this. And actually would like to bounce back the question to you guys, what you think is important within in healthcare, if you see any difference around that. But in the process of business incubator and incubation, regardless if it's accelerator or an incubator, there are three things that usually is there to support the entrepreneur and to support the innovation to grow. And the first thing that we found was competence development. So an incubator and accelerator provides a set of tools, skills, opportunities to develop the competency of the startup and the entrepreneur. And you guys are doing that with your book, for example. That is one way of supporting that. It's a sense of, or it's an opportunity to increase their knowledge in an area that they might not have when it comes to business, when it comes to engagement, and etc., or enhance whatever they have. But developing the competency of an entrepreneur or a startup, it's part of the core activity. So that was number one. The second one was development or access to network, if we say it in that way. So an incubator and accelerator provides an opportunity, a platform to enhance the networks of the startups and the entrepreneur. And that network could be network to people for talent and for recruitment. So enhance the company's organizational size. But it can also be enhancing the network to expertise, to your alumni, to your professors, to industry professionals in the ecosystem. That is also the role within that. And also access to potential corporations and partners, customers. That could also be a way to enhance the network capabilities of a startup entrepreneur. And the last part of it can be very important, and that is access to funding. Every startup somehow needs funding in order to operate. But that funding can come from yourself as an entrepreneur if you have stored up. But if the incubator accelerator has opportunities to lower the cost or help with some initial money in order to grow, that is supported. But the access to funding can also be that you help them apply for grants, you help them to find investors, you help them to get connected to organizations, institutions that can offer those opportunities. So if we conclude, what is an incubator accelerator? How do we define it? It's a program, start and ending. It does three things. providing competency, providing network, and providing opportunities for funding. If that is in place, then it's a great vehicle to start nurture and build upon your journey, and you can do that in every industry that you want.
That's great, and important points that you've highlighted. So whenever we're also mentoring startups, the first thing I start with is, you need to know your time here is limited for startups. It's good. They shouldn't get too comfortable with the idea that they can stay with the incubator forever. There is hand holding, but it needs to be limited so that they're market fit or investor ready, and they go out. They go out in the real world and they launch their product. So that timeline needs to be defined. And I agree with those points 100%. And that's essentially what worked for us. And yep, we follow those principles too. So I agree.
Yeah, I would like to add two things to it. And number one, it's also to know when it's failure. So it's to say, hey, we tried, but now let's let it go. So you've heard of the expression, if you're going to fail fast, and that is connected to many opportunities. But that is also, you have to be aware that setting, if we don't reach this, or if this is not a validation, etc., accept it and move on in that sense. And that is, I tell you, sometimes much more harder to accept from many parties, because there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of failure and etc., which need to remove. So again, I hope that is also part of the definition that you have, and when you're offering that, what failure is. And again, failure is equal to learning, of course, always, but you don't need to probably continue to doing the same operation and mistake over and over again. So the word failure is important in this process that I would really like to bring up. The second component that I want to say is the word incubate. What is that? It comes from the medicine term, to incubate a baby in that sense. And the startup, the startup is equal to the baby, and you are in a closed environment that you get nurtured by older professionals around you, and when you're an incubator, you get oxygen, and that oxygen in the entrepreneurial life could be money in that sense, or a safe environment for you to grow. The doctor itself could be the expertise, or the program manager, or you guys supporting with them. But the baby will grow automatically, if you nurture it. Then you cannot be there because you have outgrown literally in that sense. And the objective is that you can stand on your own two legs and continue moving forward. And if you see it in that way, it becomes a little bit more understandable. With that said, you don't necessarily need to be an incubator. There are children that grow on themselves without this. This is just one way of doing it that works. So I just wanted to make that point clear across as well.
No, valid point. 100%. We used it. We use it all the time.
Fast. Yeah.
Fail and fail fast and learn from it.
You use such a great analogy to describe the incubation, like survival rate and all that. That was great.
Yeah.
Another thing for people present here, people present online. So this is meant to be an interactive session. If there are comments, suggestions, questions that you have that you'd like to ask Ali, please put them in the chat space provided, or just raise your hand. Let us know. We'll let you ask questions. Yeah.
Cool.
With that, right, we'll move on to the next question. So we'd like you to elaborate on the critical role of incubators and accelerators in nurturing innovations across various sectors and enhancing their potential for success.
So I took a look at, so we are an industry agnostic institutional organization. And when we started our research, I was a master student at Linköping University in Stockholm, Sweden. Not in Linköping. In Linköping, I live in Stockholm, Sweden, but in another city in the middle of Sweden, where when I started this journey to understand this space, we spoke with institutions, universities, programs across everywhere. And one thing that we heard all the time was, you cannot compare us, or you cannot, we are in this industry, and here are the rules that applies here, and we are in this industry, and this is different, and we are a pear, and this is apple, and that is an orange, and etc., 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 all of that. Everybody said that it's difficult and hard to compare, but we took another approach to it, to try to see what are the commonalities and etc. And again, we came up with a way of the definition aspect of it. It's the program, those three things, it kind of fits in everywhere, but then the resources available and the objectives within the different industry might be different in that sense, and we have to take that into account. If we take a look at the healthcare industry from our community, so we have a community of around 1,000 organizations from 90 plus countries that you mentioned. When we take a look at how many that are in the healthcare, which by the way, its definition has increased a lot, and I want to speak with you about that as well, but it's around 8% of our members that we keep track of as of today that is within that. And then healthcare itself could be, you know, medicine, and it could be support of wellness and well-being. You know, there's a wide spectrum that has increased. But there are also startups, innovation entrepreneurs that are working with technologies and solutions that are used in other industries but might be relevant for you guys. So, for example, a laser company or does sensors for marine or for a space could be used in healthcare in order to scan or etc. Where do you put a VR educational company where they put the anatomy of a skeleton, and then you could use in the healthcare industry? Are they a healthcare company supportive, or are they tech company just happens to have a healthcare solution? So it's a little bit different across it, but all in all, the way we see it is that it's about wanting to innovate and wanting to enhance the opportunities and the growth within whatever industry that you decide on. So when that question, if you would like to make it a bit more focused, a little bit more defined, then I can give you other types of examples, but kind of general trends or general insights I don't have, because it's hard to do that. We just take a look at the common aspects of it.
No, I think that's good enough, and I think it's also important, or it defines the importance of being sector agnostic or industry agnostic. Yes. So both, you know, if you're industry specific, that has its own values or advantages, and then being sector agnostic, you have the potential of collaboration or helping each other. You know, one industry could help the other one. So I see the value in both.
Yeah. And there are so many interesting aspects of it. So when you in your at your university, we recommend that there's cross pollution or cross, you know, how do you say, crossover with different skill sets and from different departments of the universities, so that the medicine students works with the business students, that work with the engineer, that works with somebody, because and then it's in that mix that you can find the true, you know, the magic around it. I have an interesting case where we helped it's in another industry, and it was the aerospace industry. We had a client, I can say their name now. Yeah, it's 5 years later. It was Airbus, which is the French aviation company. They had a center in India, and they were looking for a way to build their training centers for pilots, so that they could, so for the pilots, but also so to understand how the plane should be developed in order to safely to safely operate it, etc. So and what they wanted to help from us was to find innovation where the UX and UI of the simulator could be enhanced, and so that the aerospace industry and their pilots and the educational program, could be enhanced. So when we take a look at around innovation around the world, should we then take a look at the flight industry, or is it any other industry where that the problem of enhancing UX UI is already being developed? And we actually find the solution in a sales dashboard UX company that had this amazing interface that was so understandable and easy to do within a CRM that they had, and etc. And when we took that process and put it in the flight industry, problem solved. But how the hell do you see that? Do you see that that crossover? And that was before ChatGPT existed, or the AI and all of that. But this is what we try to say as well, is that we need to speak and share these challenges that we have, and then be open to that the solution might be somewhere else that we initially haven't thought of. And that goes to the core of what innovation is. And that is to find a solution just in a new way. But that new way could be a new person, a new industry, a new theme, and etc., etc., etc. We just have to be open that the solution might not be what we originally thought of. And I think that is why I love looking at this and see how institutions like yourself and others are trying to encourage this and look at those success stories.
That's very interesting, because so like you said, sometimes the solution could be elsewhere.
Yes.
From where you're looking, and that's also a component of this framework that we teach. So we teach a lot of innovation through human-centered design thinking, and one of the component for it is, you identify the right problem, but then you brainstorm. And we promote brainstorming, we promote ideation, we promote, thinking outside the box through a framework, because we want people, and we know sometimes that you can find solutions where you least expect them, or through avenues you least expect.
100% agree. What is also important to that aspect is put also other people in the room that you normally would not put. So don't only have business students or medical students, etc. Get people that is outside of it, in arts, in other industries, and etc. And you would be surprised what might arrive. But it's hard to anticipate, it's hard to predict. Yeah. But if you give at least the vehicle opportunity to it. So that's one of the findings that we have, is those institutions that do this that encourage this usually have a better outcome later on with those startups. When we ask, okay, what led to this? It was because of that mix, where they were not expecting it, which it's amazing around that.
And again, I'd like to agree with you. I do agree with you. So the place where we're sitting is called the D Lab, or the design lab, or and the purpose of it is to provide that platform for cross-pollination of ideas. So we have with us, students of nursing school, we have medical students here in this university campus, and we have students of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. And we would like them to come together and work together and create ideas, or come up with ideas that will solve problems. It does work like that. I do agree with you.
Which I think is great. Then comes the second layer to it, like advancement layer, is, could we also go outside of our current ecosystem? Could we connect other universities or other parts of the country or outside of the country, and etc.? Of course, it will have its challenges to it, but the solution and the opportunities is not confined into where you are. It can be across that. And that, from a university point of perspective, is a shift in thinking also, because one are very protected. It has IP aspects to it, it has ownership, it has funding implications, and etc. So the university in this case needs to have a process, a framework in order to handle this. And you've heard about the word open innovation. That in beginning of 2000 did not exist. There was not available in that sense. And later on with the iPhone and with the tech and all of that, people realized, oh, we actually need to be open and crowdsource and put those things in. But 30 years ago, that was not a thing, and we did not have the structure and vehicles around that, of obvious reasons too.
That's true. So with that, I would like to move to my next question, which is about UBI Global. So for those who don't know yet, so UBI Global benchmarks incubation for incubators on a global level. And the UBI Global's event is where I met Ali for the first time. So that's sort of history for it. So I would really like you to know that how does UBI Global assess and measure the broader impact of innovators and accelerators, ensuring that they contribute positively to societies and economies, if I may add an element of lower middle income countries too? Is that something you keep in mind, or are you just doing it for global incubators?
We don't have any specific criteria for developing countries or for emerging countries or for already the developed already, how to say, the OECD countries in that sense. We were though encouraged to add adjustments and weights to that once when we looked at the framework and the benchmarking, etc. But what we also found, the difficulty within that is that you could have we can take Pakistan as an example. There could be an ecosystem or cities or areas in Pakistan that is on industry organization level, like in Sweden, because that city is connected, and the universities and the money. And it could be an ecosystem in Pakistan that could be equally developed as some African development country or something else. So we cannot. We felt that we have difficulties to group a country as a whole entity in terms of development opportunities for the purposes that we had. Even we can take US an example. San Francisco ecosystem, it is different from Ohio or Nebraska or whatever it might be, and New York in comparison to all of that. So it was very hard and a little bit unfair, we thought, to certain ecosystem and cities to say this is the how to say, this is how it works in Pakistan, etc. So we tried to remove us a little bit from that, but we tried. Let me say that. Going back to your question, the question was basically what my professor once gave me, because he thought that I would like this area when it comes to incubators and accelerators, because I've always been working with innovation and entrepreneurship. I had no idea what incubator accelerator was, 2011, 12. And then the question come, okay, first define it, then, okay, how do you measure the impact of it and the performance around it? And how do you take account all of the different variation and aspects of it? The way we approached it was we interviewed, me and my thesis students, we interviewed more than 130, I believe, types of professionals within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we interviewed people like yourselves around that runs a program or being part of it. We interviewed researchers, VCs, government officials, people that the startups, of course, the alumni, etc., and all of them. And we said, what is success, and what does impact mean to you, and then how do you measure that? basically? What are the metrics around that? And after a while, when you take a look at that, you start to see some patterns and some categories. And then all of a sudden we kind of developed some sort of methodology framework that we thought and we tested. And that framework ended up giving 44 KPIs, key performance indicators. Today, we have iterated that initial framework 3 times, so we're down to 21. And those 21 is across the entirety of the industry. And I just want to break them down into 3 areas so that you know where those 21 aligns. And I mentioned to you guys what we say an incubator accelerator does. And that was those 3 activities, and then it has a start and end date. But who is the incubator accelerator affecting, and how do you measure that impact effect? It's a little bit, we also have to take that into account. So a couple of the APIs, we call it the value and the impact the incubator accelerator generates for its ecosystem. And that ecosystem is where they are located, which could be an institution, a university, in a city, etc., that affects the ecosystem of it. So as an example, what is a metric? Amount of jobs created through the incubator and accelerator, that provides an impact to the ecosystem it's in. And that generates taxes and employment and etc. How many talents are you bringing into the ecosystem? So are you, thanks to your incubator accelerator, moving people from another ecosystem to your ecosystem? So when it comes to talent and an individual that affects the ecosystem, we have a couple of metrics that measures that. So the impact and the performance of the ecosystem, that is a couple of metrics that we have. So that's category number 1. Category number 2 is the value and impact the incubator generates for its client startups. And that, what we talked about, was competence development, access to network, access to funding. So how many business coaches and mentors do you have, and are they using? How many workshops do you do? How many events do you host? As an example, how much investment has been made on your startups? How is your sponsoring results? Do you have a seed fund, etc., etc.? So those are metrics within the second category, value and impact on the client startups. And the last one, it's somehow connected to the outcome of the things that you've done. So how did it go? How did it go for your startups when they have left you? So what is the survival rate? How many is still there 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years later? And that is something that you need to keep track of, because that attributes to the impact that you already put in. So the output might be survival of a couple of startups, but the outcome of it, you might see it a little bit later, but it is still contributed to the impact of yourself. So have there been acquisitions, M&As, IPOs? Up to 10 years, we actually attribute that to the impact of your institution, as an example. So our KPIs, 21 of them, is structured in that way that a set of them are connected to the impact on the ecosystem, a set of them is connected to the impact of the startups themselves, and the set of it is on the impact of the result post incubation. And that's kind of the framework that, yeah, we developed as part of the studies, but enhanced over the years.
Great. Okay, so we do have a question for you. So Zayam here is asking, so you said that solutions could be elsewhere, right? We discussed that. Sometimes established companies and huge multinational companies are searching for avenues to expand. What do you think is a role of incubators in the corporate venture capital industry, where huge companies are allowed to invest in an asset class that paves a pathway for them to tap into different industries? Thank you. That's a long question.
I would say that's one of the key activities an incubator accelerator should do. And that's also a service that we offer at UBI. We call it corporate matching. And where we speak with the market has a demand, and this is just business 101, supply and demand. It's not harder than that. And the demand from the corporate industries could be that, hey, we have this problem that we need to solve. That demand does not necessarily need to be the same as investors. We would like to invest in order to get 10x ROI. That is not what we mean in terms of this particular case. It's about demand of solving a problem that the corporate and the corporate VC has. The supply comes from the startups and entrepreneurs of the incubators and etc. And the supply might, what we discussed earlier, solve the problem of the demand in a completely different industry, as aforementioned case. But the role of the incubator is to connect them and give opportunities, at least, or platforms to connect. So I would say that, and that's also how we measure if an incubator and accelerator is successful. How many of those opportunities do you provide so that your startups can be connected to the VCs? Which networks are you part of? How many events are they sponsoring, etc., etc. And so I would say it's mandatory almost that the incubator has a role in that. But you might not need to do it alone. You can be connected to organizations like us or some other that can help you enhance it. But you should have that as part of your core service to help them be matched with corporate VCs and etc.
Great, thank you. So Dr. Asad has a question. Should university-based academic, perhaps incubators, have a different set of KPIs than more corporate-like incubators?
So that's a great question. And that's also why first we had 44 of them when we started out, and then we differentiated and etc. And it all goes back to what is the objective of the incubator that has been given by its main stakeholder. So the main stakeholder in this case is the university. University might have an objective to encourage entrepreneurship. That's it. You know, to ignite the entrepreneurial journey. So what are metrics around that? It's number of people that attends your webinar or your activities or buys your book or comes to your workshop, whatever, right? It has nothing to do with outcome or impact. It's just about activity. So there's a couple of activities to it. Other university managed incubators actually have employment objectives. Hey, we would like you to encourage so that our students, so that to nurture new companies that will generate jobs moving forward. So there might be objectives around enhancing the economy, etc. And that is different from the objective of an incubator accelerator that is private or corporate. They might say, we want the best return on investment on that. We don't care how many jobs it is. We just want the money to increase. So based on those two different objectives, it's hard in that sense what to focus and what success means. So what we try to do is to at least differentiate university managed incubators in one area and corporate in another. We share the insights and best practices on the processes, but to say that this is more successful than that would be wrong. And so we never rank them in that sense individually, but we learn from each other in terms of the process. And so we have 4 categories: university being one of them, corporate being another, public a third. Public is a municipal, a city, a government run incubator. Could be connected to university, but does not necessarily need to be. And then the last one is private, and the privates are the Techstars and Y Combinators and all of those that you have. All these 4 have different objectives. Of course, they are different within each other, but at least those are on the top level that we have found critical around, which is why we don't rank them, but we take the learnings from all of them and share in between.
And that's a great point, because the general idea is, if usually when people ask you about success metric of your incubator is how many unicorns or how many successful businesses. And what you said really, it resonates, because it could really depend on what the stakeholders ask of you is as an incubator, especially as a university incubator. Is it just to create awareness about entrepreneurship? Is it just to make people interested enough to learn more?
So that's why I never say an incubator is bad. We say that here are good performers based on the objectives that we know for this type of an incubator to it. And we have also added a layer to this. So, and I can give a good example is that, let's say you're an incubator that has a budget of $100,000 and you have supported throughout the year the creation of 100 jobs. So what is the return on investment on job creation? It's a tenth, around that. Then you have another incubator that has a $500,000 budget and has created 200 jobs, but they have 5 times more budget. So which of these two are most successful? On an absolute figure, the 200 jobs. On the performance leveraging is the one with 100 jobs. So we take that also into account, where 50% of your success factor achievement scoring comes from the absolute impact number that you have, and 50% is based on the resources that were available to you that you kind of leverage. So the word success can mean differently, and we try to put that into consideration as well.
That's great. We also have another question for you. Lots of questions coming in. Okay, so what are some emerging trends or technologies that you believe will have a significant impact on the future of incubation and process innovation?
Yeah, so I got an update on our members' focus areas, and when I say focus areas, is that we ask, what are your startups working on, and what technology are being used, and we've seen some shift over the years, and I have to say it's more become technology focused across all industries rather than industry focused. That said, it is not sometimes it's not. I'm not saying that we don't have industry focused or thematic type of incubators, but especially around universities, they have wanted to nurture a broad spectra around it. A couple of years ago, Internet of Things was a thing, which still is today, but it's not one of the highest part. And artificial intelligence and machine learning and those things were maybe on the top 10 of the trends. Today, it's the AI component and using technologies, AI, VR, AR, all of those things that you see, we saw them 6-7 years ago, but they have been kind of moving forward. The word metaverse, we saw it 2012, etc. And it's now 12 years later, it still has not been, implemented, but you see what Facebook and Zuckerberg and all of them are doing. So it takes some time for certain trends to go, but I would say on top right now, it's AI, and that AI has its own subsets. So generative AI is the thing right now moving forward. In terms of industries, one particular industry that were really in the hotspot or trend in the middle of 2010s was fintech and everything around payment and mobile and etc. They are not on top anymore, Health has also increased, but the number one or the area that is more and more relevant, it's about environment and sustainability. We have realized, thank God for that, that that if we don't solve that problem, which is connected to energy, by the way, as well, to do that. If we don't solve the problem, then it really doesn't matter what all the other stuff that we're doing. So we're trying to use technology around environment the word sustainability has it's one of those that is today here, but it's going to even more increase the further we go, and that will kind of be an umbrella term across all. But the environment connected to that, to the sustainability, is key things, and it, as you know, it affects everything. It affects the refugee crisis. It affects migration. It affects the fires, all of it, if we don't take care of it. So that is also something that we've seen to go in. So using AI, and I would say sustainable development, 5 years ago was not top 5. Now it's there, and we see just to move ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So I have a question. Like you talked about metaverse and then AI. So like in incubation system, does that also give you a hint of what's coming in the future? Like what's going to be the next big thing, or what do you see as being the next big thing?
You already know this. At the end of the day, what is core of this? It's data. Okay, so if you don't measure it, we cannot improve it. But with data, you can connect and improve all of it. So I think everything that we do is being measured and then try to be used around it. And we are giving data on everything right now, and everybody has a smartwatch today, or your phone, or etc. To connect it. So with that data, we put it into some sort of processing power, intelligent than ourselves with AI, and then try to solve all of that. But then there are certain industries that drives this forward, and some of them are under the radar. Unfortunately, the war industry, the military technology drives that. But there's another industry that sometimes is under disguise as war, and that's the space one. So space technology can be used, of course, in war, but then that trickles down to everything else, to the automotive and to every other industries. So space is something that will increase moving ahead, and also the digital world around that, which is the AR, VR, which will be more in our normal day on the consumer side, because on the corporate business side, it is not it is not as critical as in that way. They focus on other matters, but all in all, it's access to data and then using that. But to really answer the question, what will be the next thing? Please take a look at you will see space will affect, and certain of those technology will actually trickle even down to how we use that technology for medicine and for hospitals and for other types of stuff, where the same thing in space that being used, the same technology will help build better structures, build better tools, better vehicles for in the area of medicine too.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Asad has another question related to your answer to the previous question. So he's saying, what if the university does not really have skin in the game where incubation is concerned? Should it still be pursued by diehard innovators, especially when the university isn't supportive? Maybe it is better to focus on ideation innovation side of things only versus incubation. What do you think?
So then it goes back to what is the role of the university? Because to be honest, from a university point of view, you are competing with or you are cannibalizing yourself sometime if you encourage entrepreneurship and innovation, because then you might not want to stay in the university. the metric the university be measured on is how many graduates and alumni, you know, at that graduate, and they get funding from that. They don't get funding if you move away or quit your innovation. So again, what is the objective and success? Certain countries have found solutions or ways around that. We can take Zuckerberg as an example. He did not finish his studies at Stanford. Is he a successful, around that or not? Then it goes back to did they get some sort of stake and funding within that when it supported in the beginning? No, so that was something that came a little bit later that they have it. What I'm saying is the skin in the game. I understand that it's hard because the university gets their success metrics and their funding not based on that sometimes. So if it's incorporated in that, then it might be a good way of doing it. But there are laws in certain countries where universities are not allowed to have equity in private businesses. It's just per definition. So how do you solve that? So there might be legal frameworks that puts into play. Okay, so can we live with that? Can we encourage innovation, entrepreneurship anyway as a university? And how would we measure the success of it? That it's up to every university to do it. What I also want to say is that there is something before. There's another vehicle that is not incubator, and those are called tech transfer centrals. Do you know about them? The TTOs or tech transfer offices. Basically, their job is to commercialize research at the university. So university, for them, they get measured about how many IPs that you guys have, you know, how many dissertations, how many theses, and etc. And so that's what they get paid for. And that is also the role of the university, to drive research. But if we don't apply the research, then maybe, you know, but is that the university's job to apply the research that's being made, or somebody else, or somebody, in middle? So one have to kind of look at that what is the incentive and the purpose of that university, and how are they funded? And an incubator can work like in both ways to connect the entrepreneur to take something that is being researched by the university and then commercialize it and make it further. So there are different ways. It all goes back to what is the university measured on, and what's the objective of it that you guys decide.
I think you made great points, valid points, all of those, that the role of an incubator, it really depends, right? And because we sometimes call ourselves as connectors, and sometimes that is all you need to be. You really need to be a connector, from tech to students to actual research being translated into ideas. And that's okay. If that's your role, that's fine too. Okay, there's this other question, and this person has been posting it twice, really wants you to answer this question. The 21 KPIs that you highlighted, could they somehow overlap in a way that they help you evaluate the performance of the startup itself, to keep track of the on the ROI of your investments?
Yeah, so the success of the startups will, of course, affect the success of an incubator, right? And an incubator cannot be successful without the startup. So we don't measure the impact. We don't measure the success of startups, and we measure the impact and performance of an incubator that have affected the success of the startup. So, but with that said, what would be those metrics? So if a startup have got money invested in them from a corporate, then that will attribute to the success of an incubator. Why? Because you have enabled it and has it. You actually did not do the investment, but you gave a platform for them to be investable. In that sense, you might have had a hand in it by making the connection, by educating them, by making them ready for investment. But the investment itself, when that is in on the startup, then you get attributed to that success. So that is a metric that we connect. If the startup themselves have what we call high enterprise and high growth enterprises, if they double their turnover in terms of revenue or employment and etc., and become one of those we call them gazelle companies sometimes, but high growth where you double your increase, and then up to 5 years posted. If they do that, then again, we attribute that to the support of an incubator, not as much as the investment, but it's attributed to it. If they become acquired or become IPO'd or a unicorn, then you will also get how to say the impact of it. So without the startups, performance, it doesn't matter, your incubator. So what's the difference? We also measure, as an example, how many startups that you attract, right? And we also measure how many coaches that you have an offer and how many of the startups that uses them. That for us is an impact metric. But if the startup later on is not investable or does not create jobs or die, then those numbers does not matter, the input of it, because the outcome of the job, of the activity did not lead to anything. So when it comes to metrics, this is also that we have to think of. It's input metrics, output metrics, outcome metrics, 3 different things, and on that, it's the resources available for all 3 of them. So that is actually how we define it in our framework, and that we give some weights to the input metrics, some weights to the output metrics, some weights to the outcome metrics based on the resources that you have. That's kind of the generic architecture of our framework. It takes those things into account.
Great, thank you. That makes sense. Another question that I have is, so based on UBI's ability to benchmark incubation, what are some of the challenges that you think UBI faces, UBI Global?
So one thing that we found when we take a look at the data, so I'm such a data nerd and data guy in that sense, but what we found was interesting, and goes back to the challenges, is where do we get our startups from, and who are we nurturing? And especially that has shifted really heavily after the pandemic, but we already saw that before. So the word virtual incubation did not exist when I started, or less than 10%. It was like 5% of our community, or when we did the initial research of 200%, had virtual incubation. And again, the tools were not there or not needed. An incubator was a physical place where the talent were connected, and it was important that it was the students from there. But then they found that, hey, we could actually offer this not only to university students, we can get people outside of it, but can we still give our resources? Can we still, is that still part of our objective or not? But it increased the scope of the talent that could come outside of the university. So that enhanced. And then they said, oh, they actually doesn't need to be on campus. They could just use Zoom or Skype back then, or whatever it was before Zoom, if you guys remember, to put that in. So the talent pool increased, and the way that you offered your services shifted to nurture that talent. Why did that happen? Because you saw the need and the problem was still there. So why not increase the opportunities for it? Then the pandemic happened. You could not then offer the services and help nurture, but there was innovation does not stop. So we shifted to virtual ones. And then now we're back. We say, hey, we actually had it quite nice and we could scale in certain ways. And so it did not go back to the same level. So today, 68 to 70% of incubators in our community has virtual offering, and 32 has focus on the physical one in the physical world. We also understand that when you are in medicine, when you are in deep tech, you need test labs, you need facilities to all of that. But when it comes to building a business, everything can be done online. Sales does not need to have a physical location. So that has been shifted completely in terms of how we offer our services to them. But that also makes it more, increasing the pool of students and talents that you can use. And there comes another problem, which is, is that your role as a university, to nurture other talents or other type of other type of employment and people than the current one? Do you have that mandate to put that in? And then how do you handle that? And then comes insurance on top of that, etc., and employment. But from a startup point of view, it's great that it comes from your university, but it might be even cheaper or better that if it comes from all over the place. So what we also have been seeing as a shift is, who do you attract as a university incubator? Do you only attract the entrepreneur students at your university, or do you actually attract from outside? But they will probably not move to your city, to your university, but you still nurture them or work with them. So how do you reap the benefits of it? If it's not with payment, can you get a stake in the company? Can you get the funding from the government? And if hey, we are working with these types of stuff, and those questions was not challenged or like available on their mind 12 years ago. Today, it's one of the main thing. It's the the jurisdiction and the talent pool has become even more more a key activity that the incubators are doing today.
Great. So there's room and there's learning in the challenges that you faced.
Absolutely. But a challenge that everybody says, regardless in what year, it's connectivity. Everybody needs to be connected globally, regional connectivity can also be industry expertise connectivity, but that's always a challenge. And challenge number two, there's top three. Connectivity is one of them. The second one is funding. Every incubator accelerator needs money in order to operate. But the funding has also constraints of where they can come from, and how they are being leveraged, and also how they're being managed and operated. So university needs creative, set up maybe a holding company that has more rights, etc., etc. There's so many. So, but the funding always a problem, because an incubator needs to also be self-sustainable to a certain extent. And the third thing, it is about talent. We see that both the incubator cells, but the startups, and that's not, I would say, a really important role as an incubator to help the startups find talent in order to solve the problem. So you might have a great business manager, but you need a researcher from somebody else, or the other way around. You need a networking, etc. Those three things have always been true, and still are the most important things that an incubator needs to do and support in order to grow and be successful.
So all three are great points, and they resonate. I echo.
I assume that you have those challenges yourselves.
Absolutely, 100%. This has been my learning. Doesn't matter where you are, if you're in, from an HIC or LMIC, more or less, the challenges are the same. And challenges are also sector agnostic, as per my learnings. Ali, so that brings us to the top of the hour. And we would like you to give a take-home or, wrap-up message for our innovators and entrepreneurs, students and other businesses. One message. What would that be?
Regardless of how it goes, there is nothing such as failure. there's always only learning around that. And sometimes it's very, very hard to say, why am I doing this? And is this working? Am I making impact, and etc.? External success is one thing, but as an individual, as a person, for your personal growth and development, everything is a learning, and that learning is a lifelong learning. You will be able to apply that in whatever aspect of your life it might be. When you start a family, when you are with your friends, when you are just want to be yourself in the world. As an entrepreneur, as a startup student, you will get those types of learning that you will bring with you. So per definition, you can never fail. Just have that in mind. And it becomes more and more fulfilling, the thing that you do.
Thank you. That was a great message. Yeah. And I really enjoyed the session. I hope it was, our audience, and I'm sure they've enjoyed it too. So with that, over to you, Zanera.
Thank you so much. And I guess you made a great case for contextualized innovation. I'd like to say you used the aerospace example, and that was great. So I thank you so much, Mr. Ali, and thank you, Dr. Megan, for joining us. And with that, we'd like to take leave.
Thank you, guys.
You have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Good luck. Take care.
Bye.